Zombie apocalypse.
Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Vesty here today, bringing you an updated tier list for Paladins. Now, I have been reading through all of you guys' comments, reading through everything. I try to respond or at least interact with every single one of you guys. And so I've decided that after some game time and some more experience with certain champions, I will be bringing you a new and updated tier list for this current update. So yeah, let's get right into it. So first and foremost, we have Androxus. We're just going to go in alphabetical order. And I still wholeheartedly believe that Androxus is an S tier. Androxus has always been great. Androxus will always be good. I can't, honestly, I could not see Paladins being the way it is with Androxus not being somewhere in the meta. It wouldn't make sense. Reversal, great. All of his talents, great. I mean, well, Defiant Fist is questionable, but Androxus is just all around great. Good burst damage, good self-sustain. I mean, everything about Androxus is just phenomenal. So he's still an S tier. As for Ashe, Ashe is also an A tier still. Ashe is very good. Ashe is probably the best off tank in the game right now. She's good. I can't say anything else about it. I mean, between having that shield that can move, you know what I mean, with her gun is phenomenal. She has good damage. She has good escape. Everything about Ashe is good. Ashe is, you know, like Ashe is good. That's all I can really say. Now, Atlas, I have been playing around with Atlas a little bit more. And originally I had him in B tier. And I'll put a little graphic up for you guys of the old tier list, just so that we can kind of compare a little bit. But Atlas, I'm bumping up Atlas to A tier. Atlas is very good. Atlas is very good. I mean, the fact that he can rewind himself back to a certain HP level it just boggles my mind. And after playing around with Atlas quite a bit, he's just really, really, really grown on me. And he's very good. He's very good. I see now why the pros, especially like Sanguine, like to play Atlas a lot, and that's just because he does his job well. He really does. Okay, and then we coming to Barrack. Now Barrack is still an A tier, but he is at the top of A tier. And right now in this patch and the next patch that's coming, we're kind of shifting into this tank meta, I'd like to say, where all of the tanks are really just becoming very strong, whether that be off tanks, point tanks, you know, switch tanks, anything like that. So all of the tanks are pretty much going to be C or above. I don't think that there's any tank that is going to be below that point. I don't even know if there's going to be a tank in C, to be honest, right now. All of the tanks are phenomenal right now, and if you haven't played any of them, I would definitely give them a try, especially the guys that are going to be up here. Now for B King, I still think that B King is good. I don't think that Bomb King is where he used to be. I think that right now there are better area damage champions, and you know, one of which being Dredge. I think that Dredge does what Bomb King does, just much better. So for that reason, Bomb King is in B. I mean, Bomb King's not bad. And remember, guys, that everything in this video is my personal opinion. You know, just because I put Bomb King in B, in your opinion, Bomb King might be S. And I just want to get that out of the way right now, just before anything else goes on. Okay, as for Buck, I still think Buck is very good, but I am going to bump Buck down to B. I think that Buck is good. I just think that right now there are a couple other flanks that seem to do what Buck can do, just better. With his sustainability, with everything like that. I think that Buck is in B tier right now, taking him down from A originally. Now Cassie is still in A. Cassie is still phenomenal. If you can hit your shots, Cassie will treat you very well and will give you very great results. Now, Corvus is one that I had a lot of comments on the last one. And a lot of people, you know, were saying, oh, well, why is Genos in S tier? You know, Corvus is much better. And, you know, what I've been telling people is that Genos can put out multiple marks, especially if you're running Chronos or the right cards or anything like that. And, you know, Corvus can have 2 marks with spreading influence, but Genos, I think you can get up to almost 4 marks with. And Corvus, you have to be very attentive during his play, whereas Genos, you can kind of just do what you need to do, heal, you know, back off, you know, continue to fight whatever you're doing. Whereas with Corvus, you have to watch your mark's health to know when to heal, and when Corvus takes a lot of timing and a lot of skill. I think that Corvus has a higher skill cap than Genos does, and Corvus is staying in A tier. Now I will bump him up in A tier. I still think that Corvus is phenomenal, great healer. I just don't think that Corvus is broken just because of that high skill ceiling that he has. As for Dredge, Dredge is good. Dredge does everything he needs to do, and I had Dredge originally in B tier, and he's going to stay in B tier, but he's going all the way to the front of B tier right now. Dredge is very good. Dredge has great sustain. He has good escape. He has, I mean, if you're running Hurl, you can just sit there and throw harpoons, and there's no range cap on him as if you were just playing for his repeater. I mean, Dredge is just good. Dredge is very, very good right now in this current meta and split. And next we have Drogos. Now, I've been very vocal about the fact that I don't think that Drogos is very good. I think that Drogos is probably one of the worst champions in the game right now. And yes, his ult is good. He can have some very good burst damage, but there are so many other champions that outshine Drogos that I just don't see a point in playing Drogos when you have all of these other champions that will be doing the DPS much better than what Drogos can, and who also have an ultimate that executes. Now, I will be bumping him up. Originally, I had Drogos in D. I am going to throw him in C tier now. But personally, when it comes to damages, I tend to avoid Drogos as it is. I just don't think that Drogos is that great right now. I don't know how else to say it. He's just not very good right now. Okay, and then we're going on to Eevee. Now, this is one of those champions that I had a lot of comments for. I have been playing around with Eevee. I have been... honestly, it's not just playing around. I've been playing a lot of Eevee. And I have been talking to a lot of Eevee mains and figuring out, and I will say that Eevee is not C tier. Eevee is definitely B tier. And I am going to be putting Eevee up in... Sorry about that. I will be putting Eevee in B tier. Mostly because... So, when I was playing Eevee, I was playing Snow Globe most of the time, which is the one that gets her ult at 50%. So, you're getting your ult twice as much. And if you run, like, Morale Boost, it's insane. But I was never really running Blink. And so I started to run Blink, which is where you can kind of like teleport back and forth. I think it's called Wormhole is the actual talent. And it's very good. It's very good. It creates some very fun gameplay, and it is a very, very big headache for the other team trying to deal with you. If you can time yourself well and, you know, hit your shots with her, she is phenomenal. She is very good. Again, though, the only reason that I'm not putting her in A is because she has one of those high skill ceilings. Again, I think that she's very mechanically difficult to play in a very effective manner. So originally she was in C, and I think that was partly on my fault, just because I hadn't really explored as much Eevee as I should have before making that decision. So I've been playing her more. I realized that she's a little bit better than what I originally had her at. Therefore, she's getting moved up into B. Fernando. No, Fernando is good. I think that Fernando is rather good. Fernando Aegis, which is the infinite shield duration, is great. Point Nando has been coming back into the meta a little bit, instead of a lot of like flank Nandos or off tank Fernandos. And I think that's a good thing. And like I said, we're really having this frontline tank meta where all of the tanks are getting big buffs, or they're getting indirect buffs by other flanks being nerfed, or other damages being nerfed, and really I think that this next coming big update with Yago is going to be really interesting to see, just because of how the tanks are going to play out. I think that it's almost a requirement now that you have to be running 2 tanks during a ranked game, whether that be, you know what I mean, 2 point tanks or a point tank and an off tank is normally what you're looking for. And I think that, you know, it's going to be a lot of fun having this. I like to call it a tank meta. I don't know for sure if that's how it's going to be, but that's what it's looking like it's going to go, in that kind of direction. So for that reason, again, Fernando is going in B tier, but he's going way up in B tier. He's actually going to go right to the front there of B tier. Now, Furia is another one that I had a lot of people chew me out for on the last video, and I've been playing around with Furia. Originally, I had Furia in C tier, and Furia is weird for me, and she does have great healing if you can coordinate with your team. I think that in order to be an effective Furia 100% of the time, you need to be very coordinated with your team, or you need to be very mechanically coordinated with Furia and have the knowledge to play her. In order to be a very effective Furia, I think you almost have to be a Furia main. Like, you have to play her quite a bit in order to understand when you should be throwing your beam out, when you should be, you know, anything really, when you should be backing off. When she takes a lot of knowledge about her character in order to be very effective with. Now, I will say that I don't believe that she's C tier anymore. I believe that she is above that, especially if you can coordinate with the beam healing. The beam healing is insane. However, I don't think that she's breached that B tier threshold, so I am going to throw her in B tier this time, right behind Dredge. But for all of the Furia mains out there and everybody who checked out the last video and was very upset about Furia being in C, I'm throwing Furia in B. She has good damage. Great damage, actually. In all honesty, Furia might be a better DPS than a healer in a lot of situations, but I will be moving her up. So I hope that that appeases some of you guys. And, you know, like I said, after playing with some of these people and some of these champions that you guys have been telling me to try out, or, you know, that I might have placed them wrong, I've been trying to play them more and get a better feel for them. And so this video mostly is for that reason, the fact that I've had a lot of time to experiment with some of these other champions I don't play very often. So you know, there is a lot of changes on that front. Now for Grok is a great DPS. Grok is a horrible healer. Grok is still in D tier. Grok's not great. He really isn't. Fun to play, super fun to play. In terms of like the champion itself, like Grok has a super funny personality, but in terms of practicality, I would rather almost have no healer on my team than have a Grok on my team, because it's just kind of a detriment almost. The totems aren't great. I mean, yeah, you can play, you know, staff healing and shoot your teammates with it, but it's not quite in line with the other healers. He's just always going to be kind of sagging behind the other healers, and I just don't think that right now he's in a great spot to be played effectively. One of the healers that I think is a lot better than Grok is Grover. Grover has probably the better of the two area of effect heals, and Grover's still staying in B. Grover is great. I see a lot of Grovers being played in Plats and higher, in that kind of ranked setting. I think that Grover is great, but Grover, I think, is kind of situational per map. There are certain maps that I wouldn't want to play Grover on. But on the maps that Grover is effective on, I think that Grover can do a great job at healing, just being, just being a support in general. Great damage from Grover if you can hit your axes. And especially the fact that that damage kind of scales out. So if you are playing Grover in the backline like he's supposed to, I think that you can be very effective in that sense. So for that reason, Grover's going back in B. Grover's always going to be above average, I would say. He's not crazy, but definitely still a solid choice. Then we're moving on to Imani. Now, Imani, I've been sleeping on Imani, okay? I had Imani in C tier, playing a little bit of Imani. Imani's kind of nasty, all right? Like, her fire beam, it's pretty good, but where I think Imani really shines right now is actually that ice ball that she has that either cripples or sticks them in place. I mean, Imani is very good in that sense. I think that the problem is that I wasn't playing her in her most effective manner. Her ult is insane, but I've been really experimenting with her ice shift, her ice elemental side, and it's been a whole lot of fun. And so I'm taking her out of C tier and I'm throwing her in the B tier. I think that Imani's pretty good now. I mean, I've been, like I said, a lot of these characters that I put in tiers, I only played a small amount, or I wasn't playing correctly and I found out that I wasn't playing them correctly, so I apologize for the last video. Now, with Anara, Anara is very good. I don't think that I still don't think, though, that Anara is better than Barrack. I still think that Barrack is a much better point tank, so I'm throwing Anara in A tier. Nara's very good right now. She was the best point tank for a long time, but I still think right now, in this meta and in this update, I still think that Anara is weaker compared to Barrack. I think that Barrack does the job of being a point tank much better and has much better sustainability. In order to be effective with Anara as a point tank, you really have to coordinate with your healer, because if your healer isn't doing all that great, then your Anara is not going to do that great. Whereas Barrack has, architectonics and, being able to heal with those turrets that really gives him an edge in that, if you don't have a competent healer on your team, Barrack, for the most part, can sustain himself, whereas Anara really can't. So for that reason, I'm throwing Anara in A behind Barrack yet again. Now, Io, I have been playing a lot with Io, and Io is still an A tier. Io is still good. I love Io. I have a very soft spot. Io has area of effect heals. She also has direct healing with Moonlight. I mean, Io is just good. Io has a good escape, and the thing that really puts Io in A tier for me personally is the fact that Luna has crowd control and can stun. That to me will always be insane. And Luna, the dog, can literally contest the point and can push the point. It's just insane for me. I think that is a great mechanic, and I think that it's a very powerful mechanic that I see a lot of people underusing. So again, Io is going back into the A tier. Now, Genos, I'm not going to be swayed. Genos is still in S tier. Genos is still broken. Genos still needs a slight nerf. Now, he's had a lot of nerfs in the past. I mean, you used to be able to literally reach across the map if you had the range build on for him in the cards and throw marks out. Now, I still think that Genos is great, and I still think that he needs another small nerf, mostly to his Void Grip. The talent that cripples when you use Void Grip, I think, is very powerful. Genos has very good damage. He did just get that damage buff, but I think that the damage buff might have been a little bit too much. I'm not sure. I'm going to see how he plays out when Yago comes out, and it might be a little bit different. He might be being played a little bit different, but for right now, Genos is going back in S tier. Now we have Khan. Now Khan is still very good. I think that Khan is very effective. Khan counters a lot of the other tanks, and Khan is pretty good. And I think that you know, next con will be very strong this next update. So again, putting him into the B tier. We're going to put him right above Grover here in that B tier. I still think that Khan is a very strong character in a lot of ways. And now we have Kinessa. Now, the snipers in the game, both Kinessa and Strix, are very, very situational, I think. I think that Kinessa, you can have a little bit more flexibility with maps and team comp and stuff like that. So as for Kinessa, I think that Kinessa is probably on the lowest end of A tier. I think that Kinessa is very good. Kinessa is very flexible for what she is, which is being a long-range sniper, you know, champion. But I think that she has a lot of flexibility and just some great map movement. And if you have somebody with great map knowledge or that can, you know, very effectively predict the moves of the other team, then I think that you're going to have a very easy win if you have a Kinessa. So on to Koga. I don't think that Koga is broken on PC. Now, for all of my console players and Switch players out there, Koga for you guys is absolutely insane, 100% broken. However, I will say that on both fronts, I don't think that Koga is broken. Especially after the recent nerf to Adrenaline Junkie, I think that you're going to see a lot more Dragon Fangs Koga, which I think is going to be a lot easier to compete with on console. So I will be putting him in the A tier right above Anara here. I think that Koga is very strong still. I think that he, in terms of 1v1s as a flank, I mean, he's going to win just about any 1v1 you get into with any champion in the game. And there's just not much else to say. I don't really have anything bad to say about Koga. Koga, your effectiveness with Koga is really based on who's playing and just whether or not you are mechanically in tune with him. A lot of people, when they first pick up Koga, aren't great because they don't quite understand the timing of, you know, using the bar. And I think that if you can understand how Koga works, because he's a little bit different than any other champion in the game, I think that you will have a very successful time with him. Now, as for the next person up, we have Lex. Now, Lex used to be very good back in the day, but there are so many other champions that do what his role and his job is, but a lot better, such as Koga, for example. And I still stand by the fact that Lex just isn't great. He's just not great anymore. I mean, the bounty system is a really cool mechanic with him. However, I'm not going to play Lex or just the bounties just to get an extra 30 credits here and there if I'm playing correctly. I mean, even with, you know, your retribution target taking slightly more damage, I just don't think that he is great in that sense. I think where a lot of flanks tend to shine is the fact that they are very flexible, whereas Lex kind of has to focus, you know, a certain individual on the other team in order to really max out his kit. And it's just, it's almost a detriment, you know, in his design. So for that, I'm putting Lex back in the C tier. I don't think he's bad necessarily by any means. I would just, personally, I try to avoid playing Lex. Lex is very fun to play, but if I'm trying to go for wins or trying to go for the most effectiveness or go for damage or anything else other than just having fun, then, you know, Lex is going in the C tier. So next we have Leon. Now, I was sleeping on Leon a little bit too, okay? So I've been playing Leon, and if you can hit your shots, it's kind of the same with Cassie. If you can hit your shots with Leon, Leon can put out an insane amount of damage in a very short period of time. Now, originally I had Leon in the lower half of B tier. I am going to be bumping her up right in front of Amani. She's not in A tier just yet, but I think that she's in a fairly good place for what she is. I think that, again, you know, the thing that kind of keeps her from being, you know, top tier, from being in the A tier or the S tier, is her skill cap. She has a higher skill cap. A lot of these champions that you guys, you know, comment on and saying, oh, well, why is he in C tier? You know, he's great. Or why is he in B tier? You know, he's phenomenal. Like, I do great with him. And it's not that, I don't think that any of the champions are bad. I don't think that any of them are really going to cause you to lose just by picking the champion. It's just some of them have a very high skill ceiling that, in order to be 100% effective with and get the full potential of that champion, you have to understand the inner workings and the outer workings of that champion. So for Maeve, Maeve is very good. Maeve will always be very good. Maeve is going smack dab in the middle of A tier. Maeve is great. Maeve is just, everything about Maeve is great. I mean, all three of her talents are good. Street Justice, which is very not super accepted in the world of Paladins, but if you do end up playing it, it's very strong against tanks. She is a tank annihilator. She is insane at taking out tanks, and for that, Maeve is an A tier. Now, as for Makoa, Makoa is still very good. Makoa Half Shell is very good. I think that Makoa is a very effective point tank and probably one of the best point tanks in the game right now. Makoa is going in A tier now from B tier. Makoa is very, very spicy. Makoa is a very spicy turtle boy. Very good. Everything about him is good. Makoa is in A tier. As for Damba, now, originally I had Damba at the top of B tier. I still think that Damba is very good, but I think that the majority of people that play Maldamba don't play him as much for heals as they do for what a lot of people call stun Damba, which is a damage Maldamba, basically. And in terms of playing stun Damba, it's ridiculous. It's very good, especially if you understand how to play stun Damba 100%. But in terms of actually healing, Maldamba has another one of those really high skill ceilings in order to be 100% effective with. Now, the gourd is very easy, but the problem I think that a lot of people have when trying to play Maldamba is if you go to heal somebody with your snake and you miss that person, it won't heal them. It's not like, oh, if you're close enough, you know, you have to be looking directly at them. You have to have your cursor on them. So for console, it's a little bit harder. And the majority of my viewers are on Switch or console. So I try to, you know, tailor to them as well. Now, in the PC world, Maldamba is a lot easier to play. But I think overall, he's very intimidating to new players, and he poses a challenge for newer players. And so I'm throwing Damba in B tier, right at the end of B tier right here from what we have going on. I don't think that Maldamba is bad, but I think that he's just very difficult to get very, like, good with, I guess you could say. So then we have Moji. Now, Moji, super fun to play. I have a very big soft spot in my heart for Moji. However, Moji is very situational, and Moji is very easily countered by a lot of different champions in the game, and Moji is still in D tier. You know, and it hurts to say that. Moji can be very effective in the right circumstances, but other than that, Moji is pretty easily countered. And, you know, either just keep your distance or, you know, there's just a lot of different ways to counter Moji. So for that, Moji is still in the D tier. Pip is F tier. Don't comment on this video saying that Pip is great. I don't want to hear it. This is the Pip tier. I'm not saying that Pip is a bad character to play, but Pip as an individual, in terms of his personality, I can't stand him. Pip is in Pip tier. Horrible. Goodbye. All right. Rom. Now, Rom, very strong off tank. I thought that, so when Rom first came out, I thought that Rom was going to be a very strong point tank by just looking at his abilities and his cards, and it looked like he was going to be a very strong point tank. Now, I have seen a lot of people been using Rom as a point tank, which is very confusing to me personally, but nonetheless, I think that Rom is very well-rounded in terms of being a frontline. However, I think that a lot of people, especially newer players, are very intimidated by Rom and see him as broken, where once you start moving up the ranks and once you start becoming a more experienced Paladins player, I think that you'll realize that Rom is pretty easily countered in terms of his soul armor. And just for that ability to counter, Rom is going into B tier again. Rom is good. I mean, he does what he needs to do, but I think that he's very easily countered, especially in higher level gameplay, that there's so many better off tanks to be playing that I just don't think that Rom is really the one you want to be picking if you have some of these other options open. As for Ruckus, I like Ruckus. I think that Ruckus as an off tank is fairly strong, but other than that, Ruckus isn't very strong in anything else. His ult's pretty nice, but it does restrict him to just one standing spot while he's doing it, making you a very easy target. I don't think that Ruckus is very good right now. I think that he's probably the worst tank in the game currently. And I think that he's been the worst tank in the game for a while now, and I think that he's probably going to stay that way, which is why he's one of the first champions that you have in terms of tanks. So for that reason, he is going back in the C tier. Now Saris is phenomenal. Saris is going up here. She is great. Saris is my baby. Very good heals, very good burst healing, good damage, good escape. Everything about Saris is phenomenal. Saris is great. If you haven't played Saris yet, I definitely recommend playing Saris. She's super easy to play, super effective at what she does. There's a whole, plethora of roles that you can play with Saris, whether that be flank, damage, healing, anything. Saris, very good. As for Shaolin, aka Shaolin, I still think that he's S tier even with the sand trap nerf. I think that Shaolin is still very good, and for that reason, Shaolin is back in the S tier. I still think that he needs to be taken down a little bit, and I think that the easiest way to do that is just to nerf his fully extended arrow damage. So when you pull back the arrow all the way, it does 1,000 base damage, and I think that if they took it down to maybe 850, I think that he would be a lot more balanced in that sense. That's just my personal thoughts on that. Let me know what you guys think about Shaolin down in the comments. I would love to hear everybody's thoughts on that. Now Sky is good in public matches. Sky is great. In ranked, Sky is not very great. Illuminate counters her entire kit. Sky is going in the D tier in front of Grok right there. I think that Sky is very good in terms of just being a nuisance, but that's all she is just a nuisance. So for that reason, I am putting Sky back in the D tier. And yeah, I don't see Sky being very effective at higher ranks, and I haven't seen a Sky being effective at higher ranks. Strix, everybody loves to say that Strix is overpowered or Strix is very good. Strix is definitely the worst out of the two snipers, and by far. And yeah, you have the quote-unquote quick scoping mechanic of Strix, I guess, that you can't really do anymore, but I mean, Strix is more of kind of like what Sky is. Strix is more of an annoyance than he is being an effective damage. And so I'm throwing Strix in the C tier. I don't think that Strix is very great. I think that you can be effective with Strix, but I think that the stars kind of have to align in your favor in order for you to do that. So for that reason, Strix is in the C tier. Now, Talus, Talus is a lot of fun. If you've ever played against a Talus, 90% of the time that you're playing, Talus gets up in your face, deals a whole bunch of damage, gets super low, and then teleports back to his room. And I think that you can be effective with Talus, but I think that, again, you kind of have to have the stars aligned in your favor in order to be very good with Talus. So I'm throwing Talus in the top of C tier. I don't think that Talus is necessarily... Talus is average, and I hate to say that because I do have so much fun playing Talus, but he's kind of just average. He doesn't really bring anything crazy. His ult is all right, but it's not that great. 400 damage is pretty low, especially for an ult, and I think that the only reason that, you know, they haven't touched is because he can, I guess, teleport like across the map to get to that target, but it's still, I don't see a lot of people getting a lot of kills doing that. I see more of people right at the start of the round. They use their ult right before placing, or right after placing down their rune, go hit the tank or the healer on the other team, try to take them out, get low because the whole team's there, and then teleport back, and then it just seems like a waste. So Talus is still gonna have to be in the C tier. And now we're on to that is a tongue twister. I'm going to leave that in. I'm probably not going to cut that part out. That's actually pretty funny. Terminus. Now, Terminus is very good. I think that Terminus is probably the best off tank right now in the game. So Terminus is going into the A tier. He's going to go right behind Maeve. Terminus is phenomenal at just about everything. There's so many different ways you can play Terminus. You can play him for sustainability with damage absorption through his Calamity Shield or Calamity Siphon. I think it's actually called Power Siphon. But for that reason, he's going in the A tier. I think that he's a lot of fun to play, and if you have very skilled Terminus on your team, then I think that you will do very well. Tiberius is still going in the B tier. Tiberius is very good, can put out a lot of damage, but there's not much special to him. So for that, he is going into the B tier. I kind of believe that Terminus might... I just said Terminus instead of Tiberius. I just realized that. I am so sorry. I think that Tiberius is very good. However, he doesn't really bring anything special. His ult's all right, but he's nothing crazy. He's not something completely unique, I don't think, to Paladins. His bounce mechanic on his chakrams are pretty nice, but I don't really find myself getting a lot of kills or even really a lot of damage with that. So for that, he's going in the B tier. Torvald is still in the A tier, but I am going to put him not in S, but in A. He does get easily flanked, but Torvald is still very good. His Nullify, where he can silence people, is good. He has decent damage. Thanks Grandpa as a talent by giving shields to just your flank over and over and over, and then pocketing somebody with that is insane. It's very good. It's still a higher tier strat from what I've experienced. Torvald is still a high tier champion. However, I don't think that he's in the S tier. I don't think that he's broken. Now, all three of these guys right here, Tyra, Victor, and Vivian, are all in the A tier, and they are all bam, bam, and bam. They are all very good. They all do relatively the same thing. It's more of just a kind of spray and pray character, but they're very effective at it. Tyra has Burn Monster, which cripples and really just shreds through tanks, especially Rom. And they all are in the A tier. They're all very good. They all do relatively the same thing. But as for them, they are in the A tier yet again. Now, Vora is now in this, and I think that Vora is very good as a flank. I think that she has good self-sustainability, and for that, Vora is going in the A tier as well. She's going to go at the bottom of the A tier. She's very good. I don't think that she's broken by any means, but she's definitely in the A tier as of right now, in my personal opinion. Willow is actually going into the C tier now. Willow is very good. She looks great on paper, but in application, you know, and this hurts because I would consider myself a Willow main, but in application, Willow kind of lacks in a lot of ways. She can't really compete with Dredge in terms of area damage. The dead zone for denying heals is nice, but it doesn't last long enough. Even with cards, it doesn't do that much. I think that if you're going to be playing Willow, you're probably playing Willow for her seedling. I don't see Willow really being some crazy area damage. I think that she's more of one of the annoyance characters than she is a very effective legend, a very effective champion. So moving on to Ying. I still think that Ying is a very good damage. I still think that Ying is a very good healer for the most part. Ying is going into the B tier, right in front of Dredge here. Ying is just everything I said in the last video about Ying is all the same. I think that she has good healing, good damage. I don't think that she has impressive healing by any means, but I don't see myself getting upset at all when a Ying is chosen on my team. I think that Ying is very good for what she is. I think that she's a pretty solid pick, but I don't think that she's necessarily, like, obviously the best support. But for what Ying does, she's definitely in the B tier. And from there, we're going to be to our final champion here, Xin, who I originally had put in the S tier. I'm actually taking him down, and he's actually going to be going right behind Terminus now. Right back here, I think that Xin is very good, but recently, after playing a lot of Xin can't really handle anything more than a 1v1. And if Guillotine didn't exist, where he couldn't take out tanks like that in a heartbeat, I think that Xin might be lower A or high B. Xin is very good in a lot of ways, but I think that Xin is lacking in terms of having more than one opponent at a time. Whereas Koga can kind of easily circumvent that, or even Vora in a lot of situations, or Androxus even. I mean, he has another step he can get away, whereas Xin kind of can't. If you use Xin Billow and you use his escape ability, I mean, he doesn't go very far. He doesn't have a lot of time in that invincibility state, and for that reason, I just don't think that he is as good as I had originally thought. Now, guys, that is going to wrap up the tier list. I will leave this here, so that way if you guys need to pause the video, screenshot anything. But really, guys, I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. Our last video, as of recording this right now, has about 6,000 views, which is absolutely insane to me. It boggles my mind, so thank you guys so much, especially for all of the support that I've gotten starting this channel. For the most part, I really am just a Twitch streamer, but recently I've been kind of dabbling in both YouTube and other social media platforms, and I've been having a lot of success, and the reason for that success is because of you guys' support. So I appreciate all of that. Thank you so much. And guys, make sure you check out all my socials. All of the links will be down in the description. And remember, guys, I love you. It's been Vesti, and stay sexy. See ya.
Tokyo, fall in love in Kyoto. Hit the road, pop it, take it so home.